Plans, parties, and presents. These days always seem to blur together, don't they? But what is Christmas and Advent season really all about? Well, for you, the multi-passionate woman who's seeking purpose, Advent is an invitation to take a sacred pause, to refocus on God, on you, and on your people. Welcome to the 9th annual Wholehearted Advent podcast series, sharing wisdom and transformation for the moments that matter most. Advent is a season of waiting, of longing, and remembering the ways God enters your ordinary day with extraordinary grace. And if you're honest, the season also brings a mix of hope and heaviness, joy and exhaustion, nostalgia and the ache of, I wish things had gone differently. So today, instead of my usual episodes, I wanted to gift you with something fun and imaginative, a fictional story that captures the heart of the wholehearted transformation journey. Years ago, I wrote a modern Christmas tale called The Redemption of Mrs. Scrooge. And at the time, I didn't fully realize it, but it became a spark and the very beginning or a continuation of what has grown into an upcoming project, a collection of fictional stories woven through the Wholehearted Enneagram book. Now, the stories that I love to capture and write and share here within Wholehearted is a gift to help you see yourself with compassion, to recognize the invitation God is offering to you, and be able to envision and imagine what transformation could look like in real yet imperfect places of life. In this story today, Jade's story, I believe gives you a beautiful snapshot of that very thing. This is a story about fear and striving, about clarity and grace, and learning to lay down the heavy yoke you were never meant to carry. It's also a story about what can happen when generosity reawakens one's heart. So today, dear friend, I invite you to settle in. Maybe make some tea or a hot cup of coffee and let the lights glow softly where you are. And receive this Christmas story as a reminder that your starting point doesn't have to be your stuck point. Here is The Redemption of Mrs. Scrooge, read by my dear mom, Paula West, who brings the story to life in the most beautiful way.
Her face went grim as she looked up from her budget spreadsheet. She saw the trees beginning to sway with the wind gusts and tiny white flakes drifting down like unwelcome confetti from a party she hadn't asked for. Unwelcome, like the medical bills, extra grocery expenses for the company, and higher than average utility bills from last month's early freeze. Kids, get your coats on. We need to run a bullseye market before this weather gets any worse, Jade ordered with an edge of annoyance in her tone. Ugh, Mom, I don't want to go. Can I stay here? Selah, her oldest, whined, twirling her long dark hair with one finger and without looking up from the stack of homework. Hallie, don't hit me! Mason, her youngest child, screeched from the other room. Mom, Mason took my hat. Tell him to give it back. Hallie's blonde top knot shook furiously as she marched with enough force to shake the whole house. No, that's mine. I want it, demanded Mason. His gangly adolescent legs followed in hot pursuit. Her patience was wearing thin. She bit her tongue from the sharp reply and instead gathered her purse and gloves as she headed to the garage. Join me or stay. It's up to you, but I need to get out of this house. Just then, the deep toll of the sometimes working doorbell rang through the house as a cheerful knock sounded at the front door. With a cautious glance through the nearby window, Jade hesitated. She debated, ignoring the unwelcome interruption, but decided to throw open the door and tell the two Boy Scouts waiting for an answer, "No thanks." Before she could give her refusal, the young adolescent boys, not much older than Mason, jumped into their sales presentation. "Hello, ma'am. We're raising for Troop 76 so we can purchase hot meals for the homeless this holiday season. Would you consider purchasing a tin of popcorn?" The first boy barely caught his breath before the second one joined in. "We have 3 flavors available, or you can get a variety pack. It'll be here in time for Christmas, so that it would make a nice gift for a teacher or something." Their hopeful eyes blinked wide as they expected a positive reply. With the struggle over the hat still happening in the other room, Jade let her frustration come out on the young do-gooders at her door. "Boys, I'm sure it's for a good cause, but I can't today. Thanks, but no thanks." She shut the door, struggling with the lock as the 2 boys walked back down the path to the street, bracing against the wind and their heads hanging low. Jade was about to yell at the kids one last time to join her on her spur-of-the-moment errand, but looking up from the stubborn deadbolt, she saw all 3 of them lined up in coats and hats, looking almost eager to join her. She gathered herself and instructed her 3 suddenly obedient children, "Get in the car, and if there's any fighting over the front seat, you are staying here." As they backed out of the driveway, Selah grabbed Jade's phone. "Mom, can we turn on some Christmas music?" "No. I'm sick of holiday music already. You guys have been singing carols and playing music since the beginning of November, and I just need a break." Jade surprised herself with the frustrated reply, but she dug in her heels and decided she wasn't about to change her answer or apologize for her grumpy attitude. Shocked that there was no arguing from her oldest, the 10-minute drive was filled with a rare silence. Parking the van as close to the front entrance of Bullseye Market as possible, Jade gathered her returns from the trunk. All 4 of them filed out of the car. They headed to the automatic store doors, accompanied by the Salvation Army volunteers' clanging handbell. "Care to spare some change for the needy this Christmas season?" the worker called out to those rushing in and out of the doors beside her. Wrapped head to toe in woolen winter wear, her sparkling blue eyes peeked through the wraps and caught Jade's stormy look. "Mom, can I put some money in the red bucket?" her youngest, Mason, always asked whenever they walked by the collection tin, because he wanted the satisfaction of pushing the coins through the slot. Jane avoided the kind gaze of the bell ringer and responded just loud enough for her to hear. "Maybe on the way out, okay? We need to get inside." Grabbing a cart and with her kids following behind like ducklings, she headed straight to the Aspen Home Collection strategically placed by the front entrance. Suddenly, the Christmas decor she had had for almost 20 years felt shamefully shabby, and the crisp, clean look of the decor lured her to browse aisle 2. The kids entertained themselves as they wove in and out of the holiday section of the store, popping in and out of the paper supply row, picking up various items and showing her what they now suddenly needed for a school project. Half distracted, she nodded and filling her cart with new twinkle lights and greenery. Forgetting what she had come to shop for to begin with, Jade decided to head over to the grocery section to stock up on the essentials in case the flurries turned into something more. The pathway to the food aisle led them past women's clothing on one side and kids' fashions on the other. Hallie interrupted her musing. "Mom, I almost forgot. The teacher says we need black pants and a red shirt for the Christmas program this Friday." Hallie excitedly headed towards the display with sequined blouses and pleather pants. "Oh, yeah, I need a green shirt, and I have to wear jeans, or I'll get a bad grade for the band performance," Mason grumbled. And because Mason had fought her about wearing jeans for over a year now, Jade knew there were none in his drawers at home. "Remember, Mom," Selah chimed in, "I told you last month I needed a dress for the Christmas party." Her tone held an edge of fear that she would be overlooked. Her gaze went from left to right over the racks of clothing, with prices crowning the displays. She mentally calculated the cost of the various items rattled off by her 3 kids, and then knew that once they got those items, they would probably need belts, new socks, leggings, and accessories. Her mind went to this month's budget she had just been working on before her rush to head out the door. The unexpected expenses weighed on her spirit, and suddenly her blood pressure rose. Fear pressed in fast, the kind that whispers you're failing at everything all at once, and her mouth unwittingly unleashed her financial frustration towards her children. Why do you guys always tell me these things at the last minute? Can you please give me a little warning next time? I can't keep up today. What you have in your closets is good enough. Hallie, did you crank up the heater? Last month's bill was outrageous. Everything feels like it's adding up all at once. Fear made her small, and small made her sharp. A few other customers nearby glanced over to see who was losing it in the middle of the clothing section. Startled and embarrassed by their mom's response, all three kids simultaneously shushed her. Jade knew this was a good moment to stop and apologize to redeem the afternoon, but the stress of her fears got the better of her. That's it. We are leaving now. But, Mom, the performance is this Friday, whined Hallie. I don't want a bad grade, moaned Mason. You promised me, Selah said, crossing her arms and giving her that look. The look Jade knew meant she was out of line and blowing a teachable moment. Miraculously, they whizzed through the self-checkout with a staggering total from the Christmas decor overhaul. Soaking in the last blast of heat at the store exit, they braced themselves as they headed back to the van. The faithful ringing of the Salvation Army bell accompanied their exit, and Jade knew what was coming next. Mom, please, you said I could put something in the bucket. Mason was quick to remind her of the rash statement made just 30 minutes earlier. Jade wrapped her coat tighter, looking away from her son and the volunteers' all-knowing eyes. Not today. We need to get home before this snow gets any worse. Grumbling, Mason stuck his hands in his pockets and found a forgotten quarter. Brightening over his discovery, he ran over to the collection tin and dropped his coin with great delight. On the short trip home, and while unloading her unexpected haul from aisle 2, weariness settled in like an unwelcome guest. Kids, help me put this stuff in the house, and then we'll have a rest time. Mom, why? We're too old for a rest time. Can we watch a movie while you rest? We have just one more day before the Muppet Christmas Carol expires from our watch list. Knowing she didn't have any energy for one more showdown, she nodded a reluctant yes and headed for her warm bed as they ran to see who could get the remote first. Her head suddenly felt too heavy for her body, and she snuggled onto her cool pillow. She woke, startled by the chime from her phone alarm. Foggily, she picked up her phone to look at the time, but before she could put her thumb to the screen, an oddly familiar voice interrupted. Jade, it's been a while. We need to catch up. Rubbing the sleepy grit from her eyes, she couldn't believe who was sitting on the small ottoman across from the bed. Aunt Jackie, what? How in the... Her voice trailed off, half expecting she would wake, as usually happens when you try to find your voice in a dream, except for this time she didn't. Jade, dearest, her raspy voice droned on, I know it's been a while, but something tells me we need to have a little chat. Well, yes, it has been some time. I mean, you passed away 10 years ago now, right? Jade squeaked out, still unsure if she could trust her voice. Yes, 10 years and 2 months. Golly, it has been a bit. Lots has happened since then, eh? Jacqueline gave a knowing look before continuing. The kids are so grown. Bet they eat nonstop. And clothing these days, goodness. I can only imagine what that must cost. What's the Christmas budget look like this year? Jade wasn't sure why the conversation was going in this direction, but nodded in agreement. thinking about her irrational display of frustration in the store, reminding her that she had been interrupted before she checked the time. She reached out to tap her phone.
"I wouldn't do that if I were you," Aunt Jacqueline barked, startling Jade, and withdrew her hand reluctantly. "Listen, I'm not sure what you chose to do with that decent inheritance that I left you, but it's time for me to take account."
With a quick shake of her head to clear the mental cobwebs, Jade remembered the generous gift left by her aunt all those years ago. "Oh, Aunt Jackie, I haven't thought about that in a while." She allowed herself to go down memory lane to revisit that momentous occasion. She tried to clear the cotton feeling from her throat as she sat up straighter. "Well, I don't know if you knew it at the time, but we were working so hard to get out of debt. Mason had been born, and there was very little I could do to climb out of our mound of debt. And though we were sad about your passing, what you left behind for us made all the difference in the world." Jade teared up over the memory, remembering the wave of relief she had experienced all those years ago.
"Darling, I'm so glad to hear it. I worked too hard to accumulate my safety net during my time here on Earth. I didn't have many friends or close family near the end, but I'm glad someone could benefit from all my stashing away."
Remorse thickened Aunt Jacqueline's voice. "Oh, yes! We paid off the last bit of our debt, and then we stashed the rest away for our emergency fund." Jade recounted the steps they took to improve their financial life.
"Well done! Yes, it does sound like you made great use of my gift. I'm glad to hear it. How about these last few years? Has Sam done a good job of providing for you?"
Jacqueline looked hard at Jade, searching to see if there was any fault to be found in her nephew. "Absolutely. I mean, he is such a hard worker, and we've come a long way since then. We save for all our cars and can pay for the kids to attend a good school. We have enough to cover our expenses, including the recent medical bills. But I just hate spending money on things like that. You know, it would be so much more fun just to keep saving. Then I wouldn't have a care in the world." Jane perked up over this thought as she threw off the blanket, ready to step into her slippers. Aunt Jacqueline stopped her again.
"Just stay right there. Don't be in such a hurry for your little nap to be over."
Feeling like a child who had just been scolded, Jade meekly settled back under the covers.
"You know, I used to feel the same as you, dear. I was driven by the need to feel secure when I looked at my bank account, but I wasn't always that way. At first, I put so much effort into building my business so I could have fun doing what I wanted, and then my plan was to give most of it away. But gradually, somehow, that shifted over the years. I worked and saved and worked and saved. My desire for security caused me to lose good friends. Even my sweet and generous husband."
Jacqueline walked toward the bedroom door.
"If you aren't careful, Jade, you'll end up like me."
"What? What do you mean? I'm nothing like you," Jade retorted. "I mean—" She began to backpedal, knowing her statement was insulting, but she knew Aunt Jackie's security had become her savior, and Jade suddenly wondered if she was headed in the same direction. With a raspy cackle, Aunt Jacqueline made her dramatic exit.
"You will be visited by 3 messengers, and you must pay attention, or end up as alone and miserable as I was."
Suddenly, she was gone. Jade shook her head with puzzlement and lay back down on the pillow. Forgetting to check the time on her phone, she rolled over and closed her eyes. The muffled chime from her phone alarm woke her, and she sleepily felt around her covers to silence it. Opening her eyes to find it when hands came up empty, she shot straight up in bed, shocked to see her younger sister close by. "Joy, what are you doing here?" Eyes focusing a little better, she blinked again. Wait a minute, Joy. You look so young. Why, you look exactly like you did when you were 10. Hey, yourself, sis. Still bossy at 40, I see, Joy teased, sounding exactly like she used to at 10, except smarter. Okay, please explain to me what's going on. You're acting like everything is normal, but you look like your 10-year-old self, and suddenly in my bed when you teach at a school in another state? This is not normal. Jade tried to calm herself while she waited for what she hoped would be a perfectly normal explanation. Joy flashed a cheeky grin. You are correct. This is not normal, and neither was your behavior today. What has gotten into you? Have you suddenly become Ebenezer Scrooge? Jade flinched as she thought about her irrational behavior just a few hours, or was it minutes, before. Well, you see, I had been working on the budget, and the expenses the last few months have gotten a little high, and I don't want to have to dip into the savings, and Joy cut off her explanation. You have savings? Look at you! 3 kids, a mortgage, private school, traveling, and medical expenses, and you still have savings? Way to go! Why aren't you celebrating? Try relaxing a little, sis. Jeez, you've gotten so uptight. With a flip of her long brown hair, she turned and looked at Jade with her nose all crinkled up and tongue pointing at her. You little brat! What do you know? Jade crossed her arms, feeling provoked. Joy wiped the smirk off her face and looked at Jade with complete seriousness. Sister, you're going to end up grumpy and alone. But I'm here to help you. Are you ready? Come with me so you may become a more generous woman. This was the first of the invitations of grace. Ready for what? Go where? No sooner had the words left her mouth than suddenly Jade and Joy were in the living room of their childhood home. Oh, look! There's Papa and Grandma! Jade whispered as she took in the surroundings of her memory. Oh, and look at our brother Ben. He's over there in the corner, Joy said at a normal pitch, seemingly comfortable that they were someplace from long ago. Remember that Christmas? Papa and Grandma were in town, and we all got the stomach flu. I think it started with Ben on Christmas Eve, and then each of us got sick. Ugh! Yes, it was terrible. I wouldn't care to repeat that, Jade grimaced at the unpleasant memory. Oh, yes. But remember what your gift was for me? Joy clapped her hands with joyful innocence. You worked all those jobs that year just to buy everyone in the family the biggest thing on their wish list. And I wanted a colonial-era bed for my favorite heritage doll. She looked at Jade, waiting for her to delight in the memory as much as she was. Do you remember? Do you remember? Slowly, it came back to her. She remembered working part-time at a local bookstore and babysitting on weekends for months on end, intending to buy the best Christmas gifts that year. She remembered how her desire for generosity drove and delighted her. That Christmas, despite the sickness, was one of her favorites. The months of planning, thinking of others, and picking out that perfect gift brought her so much joy. Yes, that beautiful canopy bed! Jade thought about the lovely fabric she had sewn into pillows and a coverlet for her sister. I think it was my favorite gift to give because I secretly wished I wasn't too old for something like that. She smiled at Joy over their shared memory, but suddenly the room blurred, as if memory itself were turning a page. As she blinked, she opened her eyes and found herself in another home from her youth. It was a familiar home packed with her husband's family, cousins, aunts, and uncles. It was loud and chaotic. The Christmas cheer was contagious. Here, Aunt Jade, another gift for you. Her red-headed nephew added another one in front of her. She remembered how overwhelmed she felt, not because of the noise and celebration, but because it was her first Christmas with her new husband's family, and her pile of gifts was probably the highest of the bunch. Everyone had been so accepting of her, welcoming her into the family as if they'd always known her. She remembered the joking and feasting to celebrate God's goodness. Laughter and lightness filled her memories as the room blurred once again. She rubbed her eyes, trying to bring the scene back into focus. When her vision cleared, she found herself in the one-bedroom apartment where she and her husband had spent their early years of marriage. The room felt darker than the last two homes they had lived in, and a sense of heaviness lingered in the air as the lights dimmed. There she was, in her late 20s, on their old, well-worn couch, holding her Selah, a newborn wrapped in pink, tears in her eyes, threatening to spill. Then she remembered the tears weren't over the delight of new life. They were because the economic turndown had greatly impacted their finances and lives. In the end, everything worked out just fine. The hospital lowered its medical bills, they got surprise checks in the mail, and even enough freelance jobs to make it work. But Jade had been so worried, fretting all the time that they weren't going to have what they needed. She had let fear of not having enough steal from what was a precious stage of life. Fear overshadowed her baby's first Christmas, as well as the news of her second pregnancy. Even when their finances began to take a turn for the better, Jade couldn't find room for gratitude because she was fearful of what was in the future. She hadn't enjoyed the present and ignored all the ways the Lord had repeatedly taken care of them. She wished she had rested in the truth that they would always have what they needed when they needed it. Instead, she had let worry and fear consume her thoughts. Regret made her throat tighten. Somehow along the way, she'd let fear swallow up her generosity. Just as she was about to ask Joy to get her out of those painful places, Joy was gone again, this time for good, and Jade found herself in the comfort of her own bed. That annoying chime was going off, along with the phone's vibration. She could feel it, hear it, but couldn't seem to find it. Looking to the other side of the bed, she jumped out of her skin when she noticed a woman covered head to toe in woolen wraps standing beside her bed. "Who are you?" Jade was ready to jump into action in defense of her home and possibly her life, but then she recognized the person in her room. "It's you! The volunteer ringing the bell in front of Bullseye Market." The figure just stood there, looking at her with those piercing blue eyes, and motioned her forward. "Come with me, so that you may become a more generous woman." As Jade started to step into her slippers one more time and follow this woman's lead, she was suddenly at the city mission downtown. The ruckus laughter, metal spoons hitting metal pans, and smells of savory and sweet filled the room. She knew they were preparing the Christmas meal for those who had nowhere else to go that holiday. Jade had served here many years ago, but somehow she had forgotten to make it fit into her schedule the last few years. She had intended to take the kids here so they could participate in giving to others and get a healthy perspective on their personal abundance. But somehow, it just hadn't happened. She made her way around the kitchen, somehow unseen by the people around her, and she smiled over the memories of preparing the meal with other volunteers. They had so much fun from the joy of service. The thanks she received from the men and women she served that day made her feel like she was the one getting something really special. She followed the bundle of woolen wraps to a room just around the corner, which was almost as loud as the first. Shoe boxes were stacked up high on a table, and on another table boxes of new crayons, trinkets, and toys. Kids and adults alike were coming through the door, bringing in grocery sacks filled with stuffed animals, soccer balls, and even brand new clothes. Jade had participated in the Fill a Shoebox for Children program since she was a child. It just seemed that the cutoff date got earlier and earlier every year until she had forgotten about it completely. When her kids were really young, she loved taking them with her to pick out toys and needed items for other children around the world. They had been thrilled to write notes and discuss what they thought kids in different countries would think of the Christmas gifts they had chosen. absence of this rhythm had caused her to forget how much joy lived on the other side of giving. The mysterious woman was beside her again, and as she blinked, Jade opened her eyes to find herself in an unfamiliar room. A well-worn futon was pushed against the back wall, a beanbag just across from it, and a single window with broken shades let in a single beam of dusky light. A young woman was sitting on the floor with two adorable children, a girl about Selah's age and a boy who wasn't more than 6 or 7. "Mama, do you think Santa's going to come this year?" The little girl toyed with the bead at the end of a braid and looked into the void beneath their small, crooked evergreen, shedding needles faster than trees in the fall. "We'll see, sweetheart. God always seems to take care of us somehow." The woman, who couldn't have been even 30, suddenly looked 10 years older as her shoulders sank even lower. "But, Mom, Santa doesn't need money. He has all the toys in the world," the smallest of the two children in the room argued back in reply. "Well, Mom, at church I saw they put my name on the tree near the front doors, and a nice lady asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and I saw her write it on a note." Her brown eyes got even bigger as she remembered what she had asked for. Jade had seen that tree in the church's front lobby. She had walked by it several times, meaning to grab a tag off a branch, but somehow it just hadn't happened yet. "Tim, did someone ask you what you wanted for Christmas?" The single mom was grateful for the ministry at their church, which did its best to take care of them, but with her son going in and out of the hospital, she hadn't had much of a chance to reply to the email asking for wish list ideas. "Yes, Mama, I told the lady I wanted you to be happy all day. No more doctor visits and lots of snow on Christmas." As he shared his list with his mom, Jade could see that his energy wasn't typical for a boy his age, and his answers seemed to tire him. Then she noticed the medical band around her wrist. "Okay, you two. We have time for one more story, and it's off to bed." The weary young woman gathered the frail boy up and carried him to the other room. "I love you, Mama. Thank you." The boy stroked his mom's cheek with such tenderness that Jade started to choke back tears. "I want to hear the baby Jesus story again." The conversation faded as they went down the hallway, and Jade was startled to find herself once again in the familiarity of her bed in her own home. That alarm! Ugh! Where was her phone? Why on earth could she not find it? Jade got on her hands and knees, throwing pillows and pulling back all the covers when she felt another's presence in the room. Turning slowly, she saw a dark cloud, only it wasn't a cloud exactly. An indistinguishable shape that seemed to breathe and shapeshift to an unknown rhythm. "Come with me, so that you may be a more generous woman." She had heard that phrase from Joy and the wool-wrapped volunteer, but this time it sounded foreboding and ominous, as in her previous 2 journeys. In a moment she was transported outside the familiarity of her room and bed. Now, she and this dark figure were in what seemed to be a dorm hall. There was a buzz of young energy and activity, odd smells, and college-age students going in and out of dorms, hollering and high-fiving one another. Jade and the mysterious figure walked straight through a closed door directly in front of them, and though Jade didn't feel a thing, it rattled her more than what she was now seeing. It was her oldest daughter, Selah, lounging on a worn-down leather couch, surrounded by other college freshmen settled on woven footstools, bean bags, and a bright green rug. "Yeah, I'm dreading Christmas this year." Jade was surprised to hear Selah's voice sounding more mature and developed. "But why?" The blonde on the bright orange beanbag snapped her gum and flipped another page in her magazine. "My mom gets so cranky this time of year." Selah's brow furrowed, and her lips pursed. "The holidays should be super fun and lighthearted, but I think she gets so stressed about all the money and all the things that she has to do. She just barks at us and makes us feel bad about wanting gifts. Oh, I totally know what you mean. Another young woman with braids and a dark brown complexion. Christmas was always when my mom would work extra hours to try to give us something special, and it was my little brother's favorite time of year. Selah looked up from her sketchbook with a knowing look. I bet you miss Tim a lot, especially during these special holidays. We all do. It hasn't been the same since he's been gone. It's like all happiness has left my mom. I mean, I'm still here, and I know she loves me, but Tim was something special. Such sweetness and tenderness. Tears filled her eyes as she tried to smile through them. Selah looked remorseful. I'm so sorry. My situation doesn't seem all that bad, especially when I remember what you guys are dealing with. I understand, though, because you all have each other, right? And you want your mom to enjoy that you all can be together this Christmas and that you have everything you need. I still think Tim could have gotten better if we just had the right doctors and enough money to pay for all the treatments he needed. There was a deep passion behind her words. That's why I'm going to specialize in the study of rare diseases and start a clinic where anyone can get help. I don't want anyone else to suffer as we did. I think you're going to make an amazing physician, Jasmine. But I wish I'd known you all those years ago. I would have given you all my money to help you out. I know you would have. And maybe if my mom had not been afraid to ask, people like you would have been willing to help. Jasmine shook off the regret and looked at Selah. So what are you going to do about Christmas? Want to come to my house? Yes, that's a fabulous idea. Now I won't have to deal with my mom's Scrooge-like behavior or stress and grumpiness, and we can just focus on being together and having fun with all your extended family. Selah perked up at this idea and sat up in earnest. I'll have to call her, and she won't like it, but she'll just have to deal with it. Unlike her step through the door, Jade felt pain grip her heart as she heard her daughter, or rather a future version of her daughter, speak those words. She also said they realized that Jasmine was the little girl with a brother named Tim, whom she had seen with the mysterious woman not long before. It broke her heart to think that the sweet boy didn't make it, all for lack of help from others who could have given a little to save his life. Deep down, she knew this vision of the future wasn't condemnation. It was a gift of clarity. It revealed what her world could become if she kept choosing fear and resentment instead of love and grace. Before she could fully comprehend what she had seen and heard, in a blink she was in a small, unfamiliar home with minimal decor except framed pictures of her 3 kids on the beige wall. Then she saw a figure at her dining room table, hunched over bills and papers and typing on a spreadsheet. The door to the right of her flung open, and her son, looked several years older, bounced up to the woman poring over her work. Hey, Mom, guess what? He bounced on his heels energetically while waiting for her reply. Without looking up, the woman responded. What? I'm in the middle of something. Why are you being so loud? I made it! I got on the hockey travel team! Eagerness and pride lit up Mason's face. Where are you going to get the money to pay for this? And how can you expect me to get you to all those games? You know how busy I am. You'll have to call Dad and ask him to help you out. Jade's eyes widened and filled with tears as she realized who the woman at the table was. Oh, Mom, I thought you'd be happy for me. You know how much I've wanted this. Mason's shoulders slumped over as he pulled a phone from his back pocket. Maybe Dad will celebrate with me. Maybe he will. When you tell him, will you remind him that his check is 2 days late? She went back to her keyboard, wrapped in a fog of weariness. Mason mumbled quietly enough that the future Jade sitting at the table didn't seem to hear. but the Jade viewing this interaction could discern his words from afar. She's always stressed. I get why Dad wanted space and why Selah left as soon as she could. At least she won't want to take me to all my games. The pain in her heart grew to something fierce. How could this be her future? Why did her kids dislike her so much? Was this the life she'd chosen without meaning to? A life so tense and guarded that even Sam had drifted away? She turned to the dark vapor still beside her in hopes that somehow she would be reassured that this would not be her life. But she knew the answer. These visions were given to her so she could become a better woman. The trajectory of her life was headed straight towards loneliness, bitterness, and miserliness. This was her chance. She knew her starting point didn't have to be her stuck point. She could choose a different ending. In that moment, she understood. Conviction wasn't punishment. It was grace, inviting her to a better story. Conviction didn't crush her. It broke the heavy yoke of fear and dread. She fell to her knees as tears flowed, unchecked down her cheeks. Please, please, I don't want to be miserly and ungrateful. She continued her prayer earnestly. She knew what she needed to do and regretted pulling her hope and all her energy into hoarding her resources. The desire to feel secure in her savings had sucked the joy out of her amazing life and all of her relationships. She knew she had been given so much and no longer wanted to hesitate to be generous. She would choose to live as she believed in the faithfulness of the provider. A wave of peace rushed over her as she confessed her lack of faith and asked for help to trust in the one who had always been faithful to care for every need. The chime from her phone alarm went off again. This time, her hand connected with the phone. Suddenly sure of what she was to do next, Jade slipped out of bed, into her slippers, and ran out of her room to find the kids. Glancing out the window as she passed, she noted the snow had now stopped, leaving a pretty dusting on the bare trees, and the black top was swept clear of any icy precipitation. The three kids were sprawled out on the couch 30 minutes into their Christmas movie when Jade powered off the screen to get their attention. They each protested, but Jade motioned for silence and attention. Jade dove into her apology before losing her earnest desire. Listen, I am very sorry about the way I behaved at the store today. Looking at each child, Jade made eye contact to make sure she had their attention. Will you please forgive me? I shouldn't have behaved that way. There's no excuse. While she wanted to blame it on the stress and her irrational thoughts, she knew that would negate her sincerity. Everything in her wanted to share the lessons she'd learned from Christmas past, present, and future, but she knew her actions would speak louder than words. As if Selah understood her thoughts, she gave Jade a knowing look and responded to the apology. Of course, Mom. We forgive you. And then the other two echoed their forgiveness. I've done some thinking, and I need to make things right. Would you guys be willing to help me? Jade waited for them to nod their heads. Great. Now grab your coats and help me load the car up with those decorations I just bought. Surprised by little grumbling from the kids, Jade headed back to her room to grab a stash of bills that would be perfect for solidifying her newfound revelation and freedom. As she backed out of the driveway, she handed Selah her phone. Let's crank up some Christmas tunes. What do you want to listen to first? Surprised but thrilled, Selah happily obeyed orders. Hallie, Mason, would you help me look for something? Jade looked at them in the rearview mirror. I think those scouts selling popcorn might still be walking in the neighborhood. Let's try to find them and order a tin for each of your teachers. Cheers erupted from the middle row. Can we get one for us, Mom? Mason could already taste the caramel corn in his mouth. How about we buy the ingredients to make Aunt Jackie's secret caramel corn recipe? Jade grinned to herself, thinking about her conversation, or whatever it was, with Aunt Jackie. You know how to make caramel corn, Mom? Hallie said, mouth opening in disbelief, and turned to see if her brother was surprised as she was. Jade cleared her throat. Well, I'm not as good a cooker as Aunt Jackie, but it will be fun to do together. Does that sound okay? Mason interrupted. Mom, look, I see those two boys down there, as he pointed to a house down the block. The young scouts looked even more dejected than when they left her front porch, and she pulled up slowly beside them. Excuse me, boys. They were startled by her approach, and not wanting them to run away when they recognized her, she didn't pause. Do you still have some popcorn tins that I could buy from you? The two looked at each other from under their knit caps and then at Jade. Yes, ma'am. Would you like to get one? With a smile, Jade asked, How quickly can I get them if I order 10? Pulling the van in park, she pressed the emergency light button and filled out their order form. With a check in hand, they walked away, heads held high and giddiness in their step, to another neighbor's house with newfound confidence. As they pulled into the parking lot, Jade immediately spotted her, just as she had hoped. The scarf-laden volunteer was still there, faithfully ringing the bell and reminding the busy shoppers to drop their change into the bucket beside her. Rolling up a $50 bill, she handed it to Mason, along with $1 in quarters to provide that plinking sound to delight him as it hit the rest of the collection. The twinkling blue eyes of the bell ringer gave Jade a wink as she watched Mason deliver her donation, and her smile landed softer this time, almost like Grace offering her a second chance. The customer service counter was blessedly quiet, and the kids waited patiently as she returned the unneeded impulse purchase she'd made earlier that day. Tucking a receipt into her wallet, she saw the blessing tree tag. Still feeling confused about her dream, or was it real, she turned to determine her path through the store. Alrighty, guys. We are on a mission for a couple of things. Will you accept my challenge? All three hooted and hollered until Jade made them quiet down. First, we need to get this wish list item for a boy named Tim. Then we have some shoe boxes to fill for this Saturday's Christmas concert. Who has that shopping list? Jade looked at Selah, who waved the Post-it note at her. And if you can help without fussing and arguing, we can get those clothes you need for the Christmas party. She looked at Selah, whose smile had returned. Mason, we'll find a pair of jeans you can wear so you don't get a bad grade. Jade watched him fight the grin that was about to overtake the young face. And last but not least, Hallie, we'll find a fun outfit that fits the bill for your performance. Once again, their desire to celebrate overtook their self-control and volume, but Jade laughed it off and pointed the cart toward the toy department. Later that night, with her cup of tea, Jade soaked in the dreamy silence, beautifully paired with the glowing twinkle lights on the tree. The kids were tucked into bed, satisfied by giving and receiving. Her heart was full of the transformation generosity always produces. An ornament swaying back and forth on the tree caught her eye. It was a silver bell and red bow, engraved with their wedding date. The memory made her smile as she remembered it had been given to them by Aunt Jacqueline. Walking to the tree and sliding the bell off the branch, she looked at the front and then flipped it over. Etched into the thin metal was a verse reference, 2 Corinthians 9, 7-9. Aunt Jackie, I wonder what that one says. Opening her Bible app, Jade searched for the scripture. Let giving flow from your heart, not from a sense of religious duty. Let it spring up freely from the joy of giving, because God loves hilarious generosity. Yes, God is more than ready to overwhelm you with every form of grace so that you will have more than enough of everything, every moment and in every way. He will make you overflow with abundance in every good thing you do, just as the scriptures say about the one who trusts in him, because he has sown extravagantly and given to the poor. His kindness and generous deeds will never be forgotten. Grateful, she realized that this truth had finally gone from head knowledge to a revelation in her heart. Grace had finally traveled from Jade's head to her heart, and now it was radiating into her relationships. She could feel it now. The shift from striving to surrender, from scarcity to wholehearted abundance. And even more grateful still, she saw the value of what the past could teach her, the gifts the present has to offer, and how the hope of leaving a future legacy of generosity could guide her. It wasn't just a Christmas miracle. This was her transformation story.